Hi, and welcome back to my series on the guitars of Jimmie Rodgers, and we're going to do another bass rhythm here. This is part 2 of my lesson on the bass rhythms. In the first rhythm we worked on was the single string rhythm that you hear on a lot of Jimmie Rodgers' slow tunes. And now we're going to work on some other rhythms that are common in his tunes that the second guitar is playing or they're being played on the bass strings. One of the most common is a kind of a boogie bass run. If you've done my other lessons, we've seen this before, but Jimmie Rodgers is guitar players and he uses it too. This is from a tune called Chicago Bound, and the rhythm goes something like this. I'll play it for you all the way through one time and then we'll break it down. And again, that is a typical boogie rhythm. You hear this in a lot of the classic blues songs from the 50s and the 60s. And this is a rhythm in the key of E, which is the same key as the tune Chicago Bound is in. And in that song, the guitar player does something like this over the 1 chord. It's a 1, 4, 5, E, A, B 7th. So I'm just starting out with an open 6th string, twice. Then I'm going to walk on the 6th string, walk down, I walk up, 3rd, 4th fret on the 6th string to the 2nd fret of the 5th string. And then to the 4th fret of the 5th string. Then I'm going to keep walking to the 5th fret of the 5th string, 4th fret, 2nd fret. The 4th fret of the 6th string. So the whole thing. A couple variations there. I can do this. Or I can go over to the 6th string, which is what I showed you the first time. There. And then end on the 5th fret, 2nd string. So the whole thing. And then when I go to the 4 chord, the A, I do the same thing, just move everything over a string. And then when I go to the 5, I'm going to start on the 5th fret of the 2nd string. And then I'm going to come to the 4th fret of the 5th string. Actually the 6th fret, and I can walk into that on the 5th and the 6th fret of the 5th string. Then from the 4th fret of the 4th string to the 6th fret, back. So the whole thing, whoops, like that. And then the same thing on the 4 or the A, and then the E. Keep that going, or I can do a little turnaround where I do this to the 2nd fret of the 4th string, open, and then into my B 7th chord, like this. If you're the only guitar playing that, then you can throw a chord in there to fill it up a little bit. Now sometimes if you listen to it carefully, it sounds like that first part of that he's playing double string. It's hard to hear on those recordings exactly what's going on, but that's what I hear. Now that's a cool rhythm. You can play it E, you put a capo on the 1st fret, you could play it in F, capo on the 3rd fret, you could play it in G, all out of that same position. Another bass rhythm that's common in some of Jimmie Rodgers' stuff is your standard shuffle rhythm. And there's a tune called oh, what's it called? You're the One. It's played in F. I don't have my capo handy right now, so I'm just going to play it in E. You play it the same way, just move everything up when you have a capo. So let me play a typical shuffle rhythm, which is you hear in a lot of Chicago blues stuff. This is in the key of F. Keep playing. Now when I play that, I try to muffle the strings with my right hand palm. Because you don't want it to ring out. I get kind of a more percussive sound. Like that. So what I'm doing, if you're new to this, this is a basic. Got my first finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and then I'm hitting the open 6th. That's really an E. I make an E chord and just hit the bottom two strings. And I'm going from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret, taking my first finger and then my ring finger, and then sliding that to the 5th fret. Move everything over and play the same thing in A. Then when I go to the B, there's a lot of different ways to do it. One way is to just use single string things, or I can even go down to the 7th fret or up to the 7th fret. What I hear on a lot of the Jimmy Rogers stuff, it just sounds like he's playing the B. Then on the 4, he's just back to that same thing, the A. Now as he plays something like that, there's a lot of little tricks you can throw in. Depends on how you're picking. If you're picking with a flat pick, or if you're using a thumb pick and a finger pick like Jimmy Rogers did. If you're playing the thumb pick and you're doing this, you could even do this if you're picking and use your other fingers on your right hand. You can get the open string. Throw a little rhythm in there. What I'm used to doing is doing there. I should have a thumb pick and finger picks on, but what I'm doing is keeping, when I go to the lick, I'm just playing a monotonic bass. And I'm pinching the open 2nd string and the 6th string. So an open 2nd string, 2nd fret of the 3rd string, hammering on the 1st fret of the 3rd string, open 1st string. It's a riff that you hear in other places in Jimmy Rogers playing. So out of the shuffle rhythm, let me put a finger pick on here. And a thumb pick. So this is a lot easier to do. So if I'm using the thumb pick, something you can work on later. But that's something you hear tunes like You're the One. It sounds like he's throwing in that little riff. Then you go to the 4. What I do there is throw in an A7th chord. mixing in those little single string treble runs with the bass. I can't play this and play the single string fill. So I think what he's doing is going to the monotonic and then back to the double string. Like that. Now, if I'm completely off on that, so be it. But that's what I think he's doing there, and he only does that over the 1 and the 4, as far as what I can tell. But that's minor. The main thing is that bass rhythm that he's got going throughout the tune. Now, if you listen to other Jimmy Rogers tunes, you'll hear other bass rhythms. Those are the main ones, and he does some single string boogie runs, something, which are real similar to the one I showed you, exactly the same or some variation of that same idea. So that concludes, I got 3 examples of bass rhythms that you hear on Jimmy Rogers recordings. He has a lot of songs that have unique bass rhythms to them, but those are 3 that you hear repeatedly in a lot of his stuff and a lot of other Chicago blues stuff. Hope you enjoy these lessons. Excuse me, I'll be back again with some more Jimmy Rogers stuff. We'll wrap this series up and then we'll move on to some other great players.